Imagine this. London, 1720. A city buzzing with newfound wealth. People from all walks of life, aristocrats, merchants, even servants, are throwing their life savings into one single company. The promise? Unimaginable riches from trade with South America. This was the South Sea Company, and its stock price was soaring to heights no one had ever seen. In just a few months, it shot up nearly tenfold. It seemed like a guaranteed path to fortune. But what goes up must come down. And when this bubble burst, it didn't just pop, it exploded, taking down thousands of investors and shaking the very foundations of the British Empire. This is the story of the South Sea Bubble, one of the most infamous financial disasters in history. How did a single company convince an entire nation to bet the farm? And what really happened behind the scenes? Stick around, because we're about to unravel the shocking truth behind this epic tale of greed, ambition, and ruin. So, what was the South Sea Company, and how did it get so powerful? It was founded in 1711, not just as a trading company, but with a very specific, ambitious goal: to take over Britain's national debt. At the time, Britain was drowning in debt from years of war. The government owed a fortune to thousands of individual lenders, and paying them back was a logistical nightmare. Enter the South Sea Company with a revolutionary proposal. They told the government, "Let us take on your debt. We'll manage it, and in return, you grant us a monopoly on all trade with the Spanish colonies in South America." To the government, it sounded like a genius plan. It would consolidate their messy debt into one manageable package held by a single company. For the public, the deal was even more enticing. They could exchange their clunky, low-yield government bonds for shares in this exciting new company. The potential upside seemed limitless. The name itself, South Sea, conjured up images of ships laden with gold, silver, and exotic goods from the fabled lands of South America. It was a marketing masterpiece. The problem? This monopoly on trade was almost entirely fictional. Spain, which controlled South America, had only agreed to allow one British ship per year into its ports, along with some limited trade in enslaved people. The actual trading profits were minuscule, almost non-existent. But facts didn't seem to matter. The story was just too good. The company wasn't selling trade, it was selling a dream. And the public was buying it, hook, line, and sinker. The real fuel for the fire wasn't trade, but financial engineering and pure, unadulterated hype. The company's directors were masters of manipulation. They started lending money to people specifically to buy more South Sea stock. Think about that for a second. They were creating artificial demand for their own shares using borrowed money. It was like pouring gasoline on a bonfire. As more people bought in, the price skyrocketed. Seeing their neighbors get rich overnight, others rushed to join the frenzy, terrified of missing out. This is classic bubble psychology. Logic goes out the window, replaced by a mixture of greed and fear. The fear of being the only one not getting rich. The company's directors, including prominent politicians, used their inside knowledge to buy shares low and sell high, making fortunes. They spread rumors of fantastical trade deals and unimaginable profits, all while knowing the company's actual business was virtually worthless. The public saw the price climbing and believed the rumors were true. Coffee houses in London buzzed with talk of the South Sea Company. Everyone had a tip, a story of someone who had turned a few pounds into a fortune. It was a national obsession. The stock price, which started around $1.28 in January of 1720, had rocketed to over $1,000 by August. People were mortgaging their homes and selling their family heirlooms to buy shares. What could possibly go wrong? Well, a bubble can't inflate forever. The first signs of trouble appeared when the company's directors, the very people who had fanned the flames, began to quietly sell off their own shares in massive quantities. They knew the party was about to end and wanted to cash out at the peak. At the same time, other less scrupulous entrepreneurs saw the success of the South Sea Company and launched their own bubble companies. These were often complete shams, raising money for ventures like importing walnut trees from Virginia, or, most famously, a company for carrying on an undertaking of great advantage, but nobody to know what it is. The market was flooded with questionable investments. In an attempt to crush its competition, the South Sea Company pushed the government to pass the Bubble Act, which made it much harder to start new joint stock companies. They thought this would force all the investment money back into their own stock. But it backfired spectacularly. The act caused a wave of panic as the smaller bubbles burst, forcing investors to sell their assets to cover their losses. And what was their most valuable asset? South Sea stock. Suddenly, everyone was selling. The insiders had already gotten out. Now, the public who had bought at the top began to panic. The flood of sell orders began, and the price started to slide. Then it tumbled. Then it crashed. The collapse was brutal and swift. A parliamentary inquiry was launched, and what it uncovered was shocking. It was a cesspool of corruption, bribery, and fraud on a scale never seen before. It turned out that the company had given huge blocks of shares to politicians, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer and other key government figures, to ensure they would vote in favor of the company's debt scheme. These weren't just investments. They were outright bribes, disguised as stock options. When the evidence came out, the public's fury reached a boiling point. The directors had their assets seized. Some were thrown in prison. The Chancellor of the Exchequer was disgraced and imprisoned in the Tower of London. The scandal reached the very top of British society, even threatening the king himself. In the midst of this chaos, one man emerged to clean up the mess: Robert Walpole, who is often considered Britain's first true prime minister. Walpole's task was monumental: restore faith in the financial system and stabilize the country. He couldn't just let the company fail completely, as it was now intertwined with the entire national debt. Instead, he engineered a bailout. The Bank of England and the East India Company were forced to take on some of the South Sea Company's stock, and the assets of the corrupt directors were used to provide some relief to the ruined investors. It was a messy, painful process, but Walpole's calm and competent handling of the crisis prevented a total collapse of the British government and economy. He essentially saved the day, and his actions cemented his power for the next 2 decades. The South Sea bubble left deep scars on Britain. For a generation, the public was deeply distrustful of stock markets and joint stock companies. The Bubble Act, ironically passed at the company's request, remained in place for over a century, stifling financial innovation in some ways. But the disaster also led to crucial reforms. It taught painful but necessary lessons about market manipulation, insider trading, and the dangers of speculative mania. It highlighted the need for greater transparency and regulation in financial markets. The idea that company directors are accountable to their shareholders became a cornerstone of modern corporate governance, born directly from the ashes of this crisis. Looking back, the South Sea bubble serves as a timeless, cautionary tale. It shows how easily human psychology, our greed, our fear of missing out, our willingness to believe a good story over hard facts, can create speculative bubbles. The names and places change, but the pattern repeats throughout history, from the Dutch tulip mania in the 1600s to the dot-com bust of the 2000s and beyond. It reminds us that when an investment promises returns that seem too good to be true, they usually are. The story of the South Sea Company is a powerful reminder of the devastating consequences when greed runs rampant and a nation gets swept up in a collective delusion. Thank you so much for watching. This story is a fascinating slice of financial history, with lessons that are still incredibly relevant today. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Let me know in the comments what you think. Could a bubble like this happen again today? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious.